Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is a great turnout. So my name is Dotan Saguy. I'm based in LA, Los Angeles, and it's great to be here. I used to live just a few blocks from here on 29th and 8th many years ago, so this is very familiar. I used to come here. This was my candy store that I couldn't afford any of the candy. But I wanted to thank also David Bromer, who's not here today, but he's the one who organized the event. And Judy, who sits right here in the front row, followed me on Instagram, and I think she basically talked to David and made this happen. So thank you so much, Judy. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Leica, for sponsoring the event, and all their good stuff is here. I use it myself, love it, and I'll talk a little bit about how Leica factors into what I do. But thank you for sponsoring the event. So so like many of you, I started shooting a while ago as a hobby, and it was my day job was as a technology entrepreneur. I've been, basically I was shooting, vacation and weekends and stuff. And my topic today is going to be about an experiment that I made about a year ago. I decided to basically follow my dream and start photography full time and really get serious with it. And one might say I went pro, but that would entail that I was looking to make a living off of it, and that was not my goal. Instead I wanted to go full time without the pressure of earning an income from the photography. And the reason why I did this was I wanted the freedom to really explore and learn and evolve in a short period of time, which, earning an income from photography, you really have to do a lot more events and things like that I didn't necessarily want to do during that time. And so I basically allowed myself financially the space to do that. And it's been a fantastic journey. It's been way beyond my expectations. And a lot of things have happened. So today I wanted to share a few of the images that I took during this time, and also the things I've learned along the way, because it's been really packed with learning. So this is the only, I guess this is my business background. This is the only slide, like PowerPoint-like slide, you'll see the whole thing. Otherwise, we'll see images. But I started as a self-taught photographer. We're going to talk a little bit about how I went into photojournalism from there. From there, I picked up a little bit of documentary photography, even tried some professional travel photography. I told you, this is a pretty packed year. And then started submitting my work for publication. And I'll talk about a lot of practical things I've learned along the way, which I hope apply to some of you guys as well. So first, I wanted to just do a quick disclaimer about the images that you've seen and you're about to see. There's been a lot of controversy about manipulation of images lately. I don't know if you followed the news of a certain National Geographic photographer and things like that. So I wanted to just disclaimer that everything you're going to see today is unstaged, it's unposed, and it's unaltered. And by unaltered, I want to be clear, there's no photoshopping anything in or out of the picture. I'm, toning the pictures and everything, things like that. Dudging and burning is okay, but nothing has been photoshopped in or out of the picture. So I'm going to just back up and tell you a little bit about what happened before that crazy year began, and just so you get some context around my trajectory there. So as I mentioned, I was a full-time entrepreneur, and I'd been mostly shooting street photography on my time off. These are some of the images that you're seeing here were from Paris. I grew up in Paris, and I was lucky enough to go there a few times in the past few years and spend about a month at a time. And it's a great city for street photography. If some of you have tried it, it's fantastic. So these initial images were taken back before I started shooting Leica, so they were mainly with. At the time I was shooting a Nikon DSLR, and then I went to Fuji mirrorless cameras. But something happened in Paris around that time, so we're talking like July of 2014. I rented a Leica M9, and it was mostly to kind of get it out of my system, because I was shooting Fuji, and I was thinking, I really don't need the Leica M, but they have this deal, and what the hell, I'll rent it. And I spent 4 days with it, and it was a big mistake. I basically, after that, I went and picked up Leica. So dangerous. Don't do it at home. It's just not. or I guess Leica here would say, do it. But so anyway, so at that time I was basically reading books and learning on my own, self-taught, as they say, But in January 2015, sorry, I decided to get a little more serious with my photography, and I took a Leica Academy workshop with a photographer named Matt Stewart. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Matt Stewart's work. I think he just joined Magnum this year, so he was an up-and-coming street photographer, and who was shooting Leica. And the reason I wanted to take that workshop with him is because I wanted to know how to better use my new Leica for street photography, and he's a master at that. And I wanted to understand a little bit of the methodology behind street photography. I had been kind of shooting on my own and making it up as I went along, and I wanted to hear from somebody who had done it for many years what the methodology that he used, what was the method he used for street. So one of the exercises that Matt had me do at first was a little bit intimidating. Basically, we went to downtown LA. It was a local, I live in LA, that was a local workshop. And he had us, each one of us, stay at a different intersection and wait for moments to come to us. So it was very different from what I was used to. I used to just go out on the street and walk around. And this was, you couldn't move from where you were. You just went to a street corner and waited there for 2 hours, just about, and just saw people just come in and out of your frame, basically, and trying to capture what was there. That was very new to me, and and it's actually it's something I use now, because by walking around, you don't bump necessarily into as many opportunities as you do in a busy intersection, for example. So staying in the same place can actually be more productive in some cases. This particular image was probably my scariest experience as a street photographer, and it happened at that corner. I saw this couple come towards the corner, and I saw that she had a black eye, and I wanted to kind of tell the story, and I saw that he had a bottle stashed in his vest, and but I was like, how do I go up to her and take the picture? And so I it was a little bit of a sneaky shot. She was turned around, waiting to cross the intersection, and I stood right behind her, and I pre-focused on her. And the moment she turned around, I took the picture. This is basically, she sees me, but she hasn't realized what I'm doing yet. And a fraction of a second later, she just started screaming at me. And it was one of those things where I just kind of had to wiggle out of the situation. But it showed me that, the worst thing is, you get a little bit embarrassed, and it's a little bit of a confrontation, but it's not, I didn't die that day or anything. So, and I got the picture. So, but I guess it's those workshops where you try to push yourself and try to do something different. And that's what happens sometimes. Matt Stewart talked about, in terms of the methodology, what I really took from that workshop was that he talked about 3 different approaches to street photography, which was very helpful to frame it that way. The first, he called it the 3 Fs of street photography. Anybody heard of the 3 Fs? No? Yes? So the first one is fishing. And this is an example of fishing. What I saw there was this guy with his hand on the post and the hoop, and I was, and there was a lot of action, and the action was always coming back to around this area, obviously, because of what they were doing. And so I was just waiting for the action. So this is a typical fishing expedition where you're trying to wait for that moment. You're framing what you want, and you're waiting for the action to happen that moment. Someone who's very famous for doing that kind of photography is Henri Cartier-Bresson, which I'm sure everybody's heard about. And that's a technique that he used. He's very famous for using fishing. The second F he was talking about was following. And this is when you try to find characters, and you follow them, and you try to arrange them. You try to wait till they're in the right configuration or in the right background. And so that's the second F, pretty straightforward. The third F, Matt would joke that it sounds like duck. And what he meant by that was you just have to be ready for something. When something happens and you're not expecting it, you just have to have your settings and everything ready, and very, think on your feet to get the picture. And in this particular picture, was in Beverly Hills, and I was taking a photo of that Lamborghini to the right, and I was actually standing up, so I had some of the background, people looking at the car, and it wasn't that interesting a picture, but that's what I was contemplating shooting. And I was in the street, so I was kind of watching out because I saw that cars were coming, and I hear this big noisy engine behind me, and it's this other Lamborghini just basically came up to the first one, stopped right there. First guy, the guy who's on the photo came out of the first Lamborghini to talk to the second guy, and I had already pre-set everything for my original photo, and I was basically ready to take a shot. This lasted maybe a second or two, and then the second Lamborghini was gone. But the fact of being, that third F sometimes works out when you have everything ready to go. So by the summer, so we're getting to the beginning of that year now. By the summer of 2015, or almost, by the summer I loved street photography, and I was getting pretty decent at it after the workshop and everything. But I felt like there were some things that were limiting for me, and I wanted to explore some other things that were related to street photography. So for one, I thought I was kind of stealing moments, and especially that black eye and things like that. I felt like I was not, I was telling stories on the surface and not really getting to understand what was happening in those images. And from the images, you can see the perspective. It's kind of an outsider's perspective. So and then also, in terms of monetization, it's not, or selling pictures, street is not necessarily what can be monetized. So I decided to go. That's when I decided to go full time and explore further other styles of photography that could maybe solve some of these limitations that I had seen. So that's when that year started, essentially, I guess from fall of 2015 till now. And in the fall, I took a leap, pun intended, and I started to take a class at Santa Monica College for advanced photojournalism. And the class was phenomenal because you got to basically shoot for the paper. There was a weekly paper that would come out that they actually print, they still print. And I shot for the paper like a real photojournalist with assignments and everything under deadlines, and that was really, really interesting, and I learned a lot doing that. And what I realized is street photography basically translates great into photojournalism, and I think my background of street was also led to different images than they were used to getting. It was fun shooting the stories for the paper. The story ideas kept coming up. I could come up with my own, or they would tell me what they needed shot. And the paper coming out every week was, exciting because you never knew if your pictures were going to be in there. So there was this kind of almost a Christmas, a Hanukkah element of, you'd open the paper every week and see if your pictures were in there. And they were happy with my pictures until they realized I was shooting only in black and white. And the guy printing the paper came to me and said, "Why don't you shoot color? We were paying for color in the paper, and the only thing in color is like the date and the page number. Can you please start shooting in color?" So that's when I had to go back to Leica and pick up another camera, because I was shooting the monochrome at the time. So for those who shoot the monochrome, you can't shoot color with it. So I picked up a used M240, the M that's over there, and for my color work. But before they forced me to shoot color, I was able to squeeze one last assignment in black and white, and that was a turning point for me, because the story was a story that I wanted to shoot, that I proposed to the paper, and I said, no, there's this beach cleanup organized by Heal the Bay, which is a nonprofit based in Santa Monica. And the students are going to clean up the beach, and I'd love to shoot that. It's going to be, it should be interesting, and should be interesting to everybody reading the paper. And that was a turning point for me, because I had fun shooting the story. It's very playful, you can see from the picture. The images got published. I got this double page, which was very exciting. And I was helping a worthy cause. So I felt good about myself, that, the fact that I was able to put this issue front and center in the paper. And I could have gotten paid for it. It was a student thing, but Heal the Bay wanted the pictures to use them in their own literature, and of course I wasn't really thinking at the time. I said, sure, you can use them without asking for money, but I could have gotten paid for them. So with all of that, I was hooked. I was fun shooting the story. The images got published. I'm helping something, and I could get paid. Maybe documentary photography is really what I should be doing, social documentary. So when my class ended at Santa Monica College, what I did is I looked for workshops to do with who taught people to shoot for nonprofits and social documentary photography. I found a company called Momenta Workshops. Does anybody know Momenta? And they had, what they do is really interesting. I don't think they offer it in New York. They offer it in a few different cities around the US. But what they do is they pair up the photographers with local nonprofits, and for the whole week you're shooting with a nonprofit, and you can say, I'm more interested in this type of nonprofit or that type, and they try to pair you up the best way possible. And they're connected with lots of local nonprofits, so you have kind of a choice. And so during the day you're shooting with your nonprofit, and at night you come back and your images get reviewed by an editor. Mine, a bunch of people from the LA Times. I did mine in LA, and so very well-respected editors review your pictures and kind of help you with the storytelling elements and everything. And then you go back the next day and you shoot some more. So a very interesting workshop. Mine was for an after-school program, so this picture is actually from the workshop, from what I shot at the workshop, and it's called LA's Best, and they operate in poor neighborhoods around LA, and it was an amazing experience. So for me, it really confirmed that I loved the social documentary work. But the other things I found out from the teaching there was that there's a huge need out there. Many nonprofits have subpar and mostly posed images with no storytelling content on their websites, and they desperately need really more photojournalistic style visual storytelling. So, and they're willing to pay for it because it's key to attracting both donors and volunteers. So it's really key to what they do. And the other thing the workshop made me aware of is that there's many grants and other alternatives to find funding for social documentary projects. So even beyond what the nonprofits have as budgets for this. Another learning from this workshop was that there was a photographer named Craig Simethicone. Is anybody familiar with him? He's a street photographer, fairly well known at this point. He's often associated with Elliot Erwitt. I think he did a show with Elliot Erwitt at some point, and that's kind of what got his name out there. He had a great teaching, which I still use every day, and it's helping me both when I shoot and also when I edit. And I wanted to share that with you. There's often those acronyms of all the things that you need to basically cram into a photograph for the photo to be effective. And what I liked about his version of that acronym is that it only had 3 letters, and that they're easy to remember too because it's D-I-N-E, die. I like to think of it as a photo to die for, as opposed to you're going to die by taking this photo or something. Anyway, so the first element of the DIE is design. And by design, it could be many different things. There's composition that goes into design. Layering can go into design, that foreground, middle ground, background, light. Lots of things go into design, but design to me really summarizes that first element that you need for a successful photograph. And that's probably the first thing you learn when you start reading books and magazines about that rule of thirds and all these things. But that's something that you need. The other 2 elements to me are a little less intuitive, but having this acronym in my head really helps me focus on them when I'm shooting. The second one is information. You have to give the viewer enough information in the photo to understand what's going on, or to invent a story about what's going on. So here, I guess it's the faces and the hands. You could imagine a number of stories about what's happening, but you have enough information in the photo to try to make up your own story about what's going on. And the other thing I wanted to say about the information is that it's not obvious, I think, as a photographer to come up with, to think about this, because as a photographer, you're in the scene. When you're observing a scene, you're there, you can hear things, you can smell things, you can see everything that's around. So to try to capture what's happening in a two-dimensional, smaller frame is a challenge. It's harder than it seems, I think. It's a challenging aspect to get. The third one is emotion. E is for emotion. And emotion can be the emotion that's inside the image. It could be the emotion on someone's face, or it could be the emotion that you get by looking at the image. So it could be the emotion triggered by the image. But the emotion, to me, is probably maybe the hardest one to get in an image. If you have design, and you don't need all three, obviously, for every single one of your images, but the image that I tend to prefer have those three elements, and those are, when I'm like stopping on an image, I'm like, oh, it does have all three, and I use it for editing as well. When I review my pictures, sometimes you get attached to a picture because it was fun taking it or something like that. But when you have a criteria, an objective criteria like this D, I, and E, then there's no, it's easier to judge your work. Does that make sense? So at that point, I realized that social documentary photography had a lot of what I loved about photography, and it added to my street photography experience because I was getting access to more interesting situations. When you're in the street, you're not necessarily where the things happen. So it was really great to get access to those moments. I had the satisfaction of doing something good, and I was meeting people I would never have met otherwise. So it was really, and I could potentially make money doing it. So it was very satisfying. So meanwhile, I felt like I felt finally ready to submit some images for publications and via contests and things like that. And my goal starting to submit, I had been reserved about submitting until then because I really wanted to have something that I was proud of. And so at that point, I felt like I have some photos that I can start submitting. And my goal was to start submitting to publications or contests that could give me some credibility for my work. So there's many contests out there, and some of them are more looking, after your money than they are looking to really, do something serious. And so I'll tell you a little bit later about how I go about submitting and what my criteria is. But one of the best spots that I found originally to submit my pictures was National Geographic Your Shot community. Does anybody submit to Your Shot? So for those who aren't familiar with Your Shot, it's basically a community of photographers who are mostly not professional photographers who you get to submit. You can create an account on Your Shot, and I forget what the URL is, but you can just Google National Geographic Your Shot. And you submit, I think you can submit up to 5 pictures per week or something like that. And they do that probably so you don't dump your entire hard drive on them, and you're a little bit selective about what you send. And every weekday, so it's not during weekends, but every weekday they pick 12 pictures and they publish them on the website. So it's nice because you get published on National Geographic's website, but it's every day. So there's a lot of opportunities to get published, and if you keep with it and you submit on a regular basis, and your content is good enough, there's a good chance you end up getting published on there at some point. So the disadvantage of Your Shot, and I was aware of it from the start, but this is something that everyone needs to assess carefully and based on their own situation and their comfort level, is that when you submit to Your Shot, you basically sign away not your rights, you're still the copyright owner for that photo, but you give National Geographic the right to use that photo for as long as they want on any of their publications without paying you. So you have to be aware of that and comfortable with that when you do that. My calculation, or I had something that I assessed carefully myself, and I figured at the time that me being able to use their name in terms of saying I was published on National Geographic's website was worth more to me than the rights that I was basically giving them to publish the photo. And it really depends where you are in your trajectory and what you're comfortable doing. Personally, I've stopped submitting because I feel like at this point I've gotten enough images published there and everything that I've gotten what I need, and it probably wouldn't be wise for me to keep submitting, but at the time it was very useful to submit, and I'll tell you a little bit about how it paid off for me, but it really did. So, so several of my images got published in the Daily Dozen, and I got one that was published as Photo of the Day on the main National Geographic website, so it was very satisfying. And but my images I felt were a little bit outliers on Nat Geo because I was taking more street style stuff, and it was in black and white mostly. Is it cold? Yeah. A little bit cold. Is it possible to make it a little warmer? No? Okay. All right.
It's only cold up front. It's hot back here.
Okay. I'm comfortable because, but sorry about that. So what it made me want to, because I was looking at this National Geographic stuff all day long and looking at what other people were shooting, and I was like, oh, I'd really like to try this travel photography stuff. So I wasn't at a stage, obviously, where I could get a paid assignment doing travel photography, but I wanted to experience it that way. So I decided to organize my own, basically my own assignment, and I picked Cuba, because of everything that was happening this year. 2016 has been a great year of change for Cuba. And it's very photogenic and is on the verge of radical change, and it's popular in the news, so I figured I might be able to get published if I bring back some good content. So, and I decided within Cuba to really focus on Old Havana, because I felt like this, if anything's going to change, Old Havana is going to change first, because that's where the cruise ships are coming and so on and so forth. So I only had 6 days to go, but I had all the time I wanted to prepare for the trip. So I wanted to execute it again as a professional assignment, and I'm going to take you there and share some of the images from the trip, but also talk about my process there. So what I started by doing is I started looking at a lot of books that were published on photographers who had been to Cuba, including David Allen Harvey and Peter Turnley, and a lot of these guys have wonderful books about Cuba. So I went through the books and figured out a shot list of things that might be interesting to shoot, things might be changing. And from that shot list, I found a fixer after that. So I don't know if anybody familiar with the term fixer. It's a photojournalism term for basically someone, a local who knows the location well and can scout out locations for you, can guide you once you're there. They can translate, they can diffuse situations if you're, end up in trouble and things like that. So I found somebody online who could help me there locally, and they started scouting out locations for me. And my timing couldn't have been better. I got there the week that they started running cruise ships again from Miami. So it was, the first cruise ship arrived. It was right after President Obama was there. It was right after the Pope had visited. The Rolling Stones had just done a concert there. I mean, it was just and what I didn't know when I got there is that several things were happening that week. So the cruise ships were coming back. They were filming the Fast and the Furious. They had like a bunch of blocks of Havana, old Havana, blocked off for the filming of Fast and the Furious, and the Kardashians were there. So I actually bumped into them. It was very funny. So and didn't know who they were, but I found out very quickly. But anyway, it was a fantastic timing, and I shot there basically sunrise to sunset, or even after sunset every day, and methodically visiting all the locations that we had planned, and then also leaving some time to go around and try, get more shots that weren't planned, like coming out at 7 o'clock in the morning with the sun in the back, and having those, seeing people just watching the street and being able to layer them, and the characters and the light, the motion. It was fantastic. It was just amazing experience. So as expected, there was great color, great characters. Some details were unexpected and kind of tell the story about what's happening there. Can you see something that's out of place here, other than his belly sticking out of the shirt? Yeah, so they had decals on those cars. This is a 1950s Peugeot, and other cars had an Apple sticker on them. And they don't get Monster drinks or Apple yet in Cuba because of the embargo. So this was purely a fashion statement on their part. Some of these things I saw when I photographed them. Some of them I actually found, just looking at the computer afterwards. This one I didn't see when I took the photograph, but can you see something here that's out of place, that seems out of place? There's a brand new NBA basketball hoop in this totally, otherwise devastated landscape. You got this brand new. So turns out the NBA had come a year earlier, and they had given some hoops to some neighborhoods. So this was one of them. How about here? Anything sticks out? The good catch. They're lights. They're installing lights, suction cup mounted lights on that windshield, because the Kardashians aren't going to film in this car. I didn't know when I took the picture. I discovered that later. I just thought the lighting was interesting, and it was raining, and I thought those were two cab drivers talking, and turns out they were techs for the Kardashians. So this, in this scene was all, I didn't know what I was, I love that mural, which is huge because it's far back. You can see how big it is, of that woman lying down in that soccer scene in front. And I didn't know what it was, and I posted this on Instagram, and then a few weeks after I posted it, the artist who painted the mural reached out to me and said, this is actually supposed to represent Snow White, and you can see a little bit of the apple, I guess, here. And she's still holding the apple, so she's taking a bite out of the apple, and it was a metaphor for Cuba under the Castro regime. So I thought that was pretty powerful. Lots of colors. I just kept playing. I called this my M&M shot. It's like you got the blue and the red and the yellow, and you got all the M&M guys. It's probably some non-kosher meat. And but I just love it's just a lot of life in the street and lots of colors. Pet roosters were apparently a thing in Cuba, because I bumped into a few of these scenes. And this is, if you ever go to Havana, this is a boxing gym that everybody shoots when they go there. It's they had a kids boxing lesson that day, but it's the Rafael Trejo boxing gym in Old Havana, in a very poor neighborhood. So the sports are free, so all those kids are from the neighborhood and just learning boxing there, having fun. And I bumped into this scene. That was the reason. So I was like, well, why doesn't he have the two flags out? And is it, can he I was like, maybe he can even get in trouble for having the American flag. I mean, but people were very American friendly, to my surprise. Some people were wearing American flag pants. I mean, you see all those American flags everywhere. It was kind of a fashion thing. This guy, in his case, he was waiting for the first cruise ship to come in. It was on May 2nd, and what you can't see yet, and I'll show you another photo where you can see it, but he's facing the port of Old Havana. So he's facing the water, and he's just waiting for that cruise ship to come in, and he's welcoming the cruise ship with the two flags. So I actually spoke to him, or through my fixer, we spoke to him, and one learning that I got from the Momenta workshop I was talking about earlier is that Jamie Rose is the one who teaches that workshop, and she said, be a toddler. One of the learners would be a toddler. And what she meant by that is, how kids are inhibited about asking questions. They'll ask the things that normally you wouldn't dare asking as an adult. So in this case, can I visit your apartment? Can I come up and see what your apartment is like? And of course he obliged. He was very happy to show me his apartment and to chat. And that was a common thing among all the people I met in Cuba. Everyone was very open, welcoming. And so I came up and visited his apartment. So this is what he looks like. His name is Louis. So I don't know if you can see, it's kind of dim, but this is the hallway. It looks better on my screen. I don't know if it's enough, but anyway, this is the hallway that leads to his front door. And you have to walk over those planks to be able to get there. And I wasn't sure if the planks were there because the rest had, caved, or it didn't look very safe. And the building is about to collapse, and he's been offered to be relocated several times, and he just doesn't want to go anywhere else, and you'll see why. This is the view from his window. So he's been living there for 50 years, and basically there's only him and another family in the building. And they might have demolished the building by now because this was back in May, but he just didn't want to go. He was a professional dancer. This is, by the way, the one post photo that you'll see this whole presentation. I asked him to stand in a certain position because there was something on the wall I was trying to hide. but yeah, this is the one post photo. Anyway. So I got back with lots of images. I had shot lots and lots of images because I was shooting morning to night every day, and I had no clue what to do with them. I had never, done anything like this, or never been on assignment for anything. So I contacted my mentor at that Momenta workshop, Jamie Rose, and after looking at the images, she gave me contacts for 3 editors to go and send them. So one of them at ABC News agreed to publish a 14-image slideshow on the ABC News photo homepage. So that slideshow ran for about a month there. And I got paid for it. So it was, it felt good to be able to do something like this and actually get paid for the work. The other thing I did with the images is I submitted 5 of the images to a contest on Your Shot. I don't know if you're familiar with, on Your Shot they do those they call them assignments. You submit images into them. Sometimes there's prizes associated with winning the assignment, sometimes not. But the nice thing is at the end of the assignment, they publish what they call a story, and if you're chosen, your photos are in that story. And in this case, they wanted 5 photos that, the contest was called Ask a Local, and they wanted 5 photos, so not just one. That was unusual. They wanted a set of 5 photos that embodied a slice of local life. So I was like, I have the perfect thing for that, because I was just coming back from Cuba, so I sent 5 of my Cuba photos. And I also sent a couple of images to there was the National Geographic Travel Photographer of the Year award coming up, and so I did a couple submissions to that. And two very cool things happened. One is I won that Ask a Local competition with 2 other people. So the story was published on the Nat Geo website on July 16th, and it opened with 5 of my Cuba images, which was kind of neat. But what I didn't realize at the time is that there was a prize associated with it. I hadn't read far enough into the contest thing to find out that there was a prize. And the prize was to go on assignment with National Geographic to shoot in South Korea, in Seoul. So I got an email back from Jean Moderman, the editor, like before I learned that I won. She said, "You're a finalist, but you need to answer the few questions further down in this email before we can see if you won or not." And so in the questions was, please verify that you can be in Seoul between September 2nd and September 5th. And I was like, why is she asking me this? Sure, I can be there, but do I have to pay for my ticket? Like, what? So it turns out that was the prize. So anyway, that was kind of a dream come true thing for me. That was an amazing trip, and I'll talk a little more about that. But the second cool thing that happened is that one of my Venice Beach images was selected as a winner of the Nat Geo Travel Photography of the Year award. This particular photo, it was the only black and white photo that was picked. There were 11 photos total, and so that was really nice. So got to Seoul on September 2nd, still in that crazy year that I was talking about, and I was actually, I could tell people I was on assignment with National Geographic, which was kind of insane. I was there with two other photographers who won as well, and we got to shoot around Seoul. And the goal was to get photos for the government of Seoul to use for their website and their brochures, and also for Nat Geo to use. So I'll just walk you through a few of the photos that I brought back. So this is one. Just fantastic. I'd never been to Asia before, so that was pretty amazing experience. Yeah, very unusual type of scenes. Kind of surrealistic, almost like everything kind of merging together between the signs and the real people and what they call the perfect people and the real people. This is actually you would recognize the name of this neighborhood. It's Gangnam. Remember Gangnam Style, the song? So this is the neighborhood. Just beautiful town, beautiful city. Yeah, some just funny framing. There's a lot of palaces, and people dress up like this to visit the palaces. So it's a thing there where you just rent a costume and you go and visit. So this was a class, I think, that was visiting. There was this electronic LED rose garden, very high tech. And this is where I wish the M had a slightly higher ISO capability. I really pushed it to its limits there. So this was all shot with the M, with the M240. So what I realized about travel photography is it was fun and easier to publish than street photography. But because of the limited time I had, I was 6 days in Cuba, 4 days in Seoul. Again, I found that, I enjoyed shooting and I got some good stuff, but I felt like I couldn't go really in depth like I wanted to go in depth. So it really would require a lot more time away and do longer trips and really stay in the country and learn about the country and the culture and do some in-depth stories. And it's not something I can practically do right now for the reason I have, so my kids are here, but I want to be able to be at home with them more often than not. So for now, travel photography is something I keep for later. Maybe at some point also do some social documentary work with NGOs. That'll be great. But maybe in a few years after they go to college or something like that. But that said, there's plenty of important stories to be told where I live in LA. And so coming back to LA, I'm really focusing on the two main projects that I'm focusing on. One is the culture of Venice Beach, and we're going to see some more photos of that. And the second one is I started working on a long-term social documentary project about people coming out of homelessness. We have an enormous homeless problem in LA, as you do here in New York. And what I'm interested in telling is the story of people coming out of homelessness and the organizations that help them come out of homelessness. This particular image is about Tara, who's in the background. She's a homeless mother, and this is she was with her two twin toddler girls in Pershing Square in downtown LA. She also had a 5-year-old running around, and she was pregnant as well. This is Sarah Evans. That's when she was so. Unfortunately, Tara I never saw again, so I was hoping to be able to tell her story, but I probably won't be able to. Sarah, I was able to tell her story coming out of homelessness. She was, this photo was taken at 7th Street and South Central in downtown LA. That was her spot, that's where she lived, essentially for 4 years after she came from North Carolina. And she was probably to escape a abusive family situation. And she was coming to meet a friend in LA, and that never materialized, and she spent 4 years on the street. This is her receiving her keys to her apartment after a long process with a case manager from PATH. PATH is the organization that I shoot this with, people assisting the homeless. And this is her taking her first steps into her own apartment for the first time after 4 years. So my goal with this project is to be able to tell the story of other people coming out of homelessness like Sarah and really go more in depth. This was a very quick one because I met her right before she got her apartment, but I want to be able to tell the stories more in depth and also tell the story of families coming out of homelessness because we have many homeless families in LA. So collaborating with a nonprofit really is great to provide me access, and they also take care of things like the logistics of helping to get grants and helping to publish the work, maybe get an exhibit set up when it's all done, things like that. So there's a lot of advantages to working directly with nonprofits for this. And I'm also starting to work with another organization who helps women with children come out of homelessness. So that's just starting. I wanted to share a few of the lessons that I've learned along this journey. This very quick one-year stint here. So I used to shoot street without real intention. It was great. I would just go out and felt very, it's very freeing to go and observe the world and everything. But there's nothing wrong with that approach. I was very happy with it, but it's really been very productive in terms of building my portfolio to focus on a few personal projects that I really love and that I've just loved working on. And in terms even of just street photography, focusing on a specific area, for me it's Venice Beach, it's really helped me build a more cohesive body of work. So I know other photographers, sometimes there's no specific geographic thing, but they work on humor or other street-related topics, and it helps, just gel the portfolio better. That was one learning, to really focus on something. One unpleasant side effect is that there's all the times there's opportunities come up, and I can't necessarily follow all these opportunities. So I'm having to say no more often than not when new projects or people ask me to shoot events or things like that, and I have to kind of keep my focus on the work that I want to finish. So that's the downside of it. The other thing about having a project like Venice Beach, which is essentially in my backyard, it's a 20 minutes drive from where I live, is that I never have an excuse to go out and shoot. All the stuff that I do with social documentary work, sometimes I depend on those organizations, and they don't necessarily go at the pace that I want to go, or they don't necessarily have the people to work with that I want to work with, the clients, they call them, for me to photograph. So to have a project where I have no excuses, I can always go out and shoot, there's always something going on, is very helpful. So another part of what I've learned is about editing my work. It's really, really difficult task. I try to be, it's hard to be critical of your own work. I've found in my experience, because I think it's hard to detach yourself from the shooting experience. Sometimes I'll have a great time shooting, and my vision of what I shot is flawed because I just associated the good feeling of the shoot with the images. And it's hard to recognize a bad image when I enjoyed the shoot, just the same way as it's hard to recognize a good image when I didn't enjoy the shoot. So it can cut both ways. The weightlifter that we saw that I ended up winning that contest with, I didn't actually pick till it's not something that jumped out at me when I first looked at the photo. And so because it wasn't a shoot, I think it was a shoot where I only shot maybe 30 frames, and I wasn't very inspired that day, and it just didn't jump out at me when I saw it. So it can really cut both ways. So what I found helpful is to have a objective criteria. I was talking about that DIE earlier, and it really helps figuring out what's the good from the bad. And I also get help from friends, or sometimes I ask on Instagram. I'll post 2 photos and say which one do you like best, and get people's reactions and feedback on them. And my 12-year-old son over there actually is pretty good at helping me edit as well. He's got a good eye. So the other thing I learned is sometimes you get lucky and you get the picture the first time, but most times it really comes down to hard work and perseverance. So on Venice Beach, just like in Cuba, I have my shot list of things I want to eventually get. This is not a successful attempt. It was the first time trying to shoot those slackliners, and I knew vaguely what I wanted. I wanted a sense of place with the pier in the background. I thought I could layer them, so that I thought that could be interesting to layer them, but it just wasn't the right angle. It wasn't the right moment, and it's a little bit confusing over here. There's too much going on. The silhouettes aren't really detached enough. But it got me started trying to shoot this. So I came back maybe 5 more times, and then after 5 more, so this was on March 29th of this year. A few months later, I ended up getting this photo. And I was like, we're getting there. Still not something I'd want to put in my portfolio, but we're getting close. I even like that I think this person's climbing the rope in the background. But it wasn't exactly, I thought I could still do better. I was like, well, if I don't get anything, at least I've got this one, but I want to keep shooting this. And then about a month later, I ended up getting this. And the reason I love this picture is, I love this guy just hanging out there, but this to me is what makes the picture right there, is this detail, and he's completely detached from the shoe. And so once I got this, and she's on point, so I was like, once I got that, I just checked it off my shot list. I can move on to trying to shoot something else. But sometimes it might have taken me about 12 shoots, about maybe 1 hour each, staying at this place and trying to get the right layering and the right moment and the right light. And so sometimes that's what it takes. Now I'm going to show you a few images that are not mine, even though I wish they were, just to talk about where I get my inspiration and the photographers that I enjoy studying the work of. You might know this photo. It's not his most famous photo, but this is Henri Cartier-Bresson. And I grew up in Paris, so that's why I can't get Henri Cartier-Bresson, as I guess the way you would pronounce it. But I try to find photographers whose work inspire me, and I buy their books, and I study their work very carefully. And so for this particular photographer, what I love, everyone knows this one, is he had the sense of instinctive sense of geometrical compositions and an amazing sense of moment. So between the geometry and the moment, those are the things that I try to study in his work and try to get inspiration from. I don't know if anyone knows this image. Sam Abel, amazing photographer. He shot for National Geographic for about 30 years. Right, 33 years. I was lucky enough to go to one of the talks that he gave in LA, and he's not just a great photographer, he's a great human being and just a very passionate teacher. If you ever get a chance to go to one of his workshops, a lot of people give workshops, but he just gives them with his heart, and he's a great teacher, and so this is my favorite photo of his. And the funny story is I was at a auction, a local auction, where he had donated a large print of this photo, and I really, really wanted that photo. But and I started bidding, and it was a silent auction. And at some point, by just talking to the people around, I realized that I was bidding against a couple who looked familiar. And after talking to them, I realized they were Liz O'Balin and Rick Loomis, who are two pretty well-known LA Times photographers. Rick is a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, and Liz has done amazing work as well. And now they're also friends. But I wanted to, I prefer to keep them as mentors and friends and let them get the photo. So I don't have this print, but at some point I hope to get one. I love Salgado for high contrast, layered documentary work. And I also love going to his talks. And he has, what I love also, what it taught me is he has this very deliberate way of pursuing and organizing his work to make a point about, a greater point about economics, about social issues, and so that's very inspiring to me. Alex Webb is, I just love his work. He does mostly, now he only does color. Actually started in black and white, but even though I shoot mostly black and white, I find his work very, very inspiring. He has this way of filling the frame and layering in this really like insane way where you even wonder if those scenes could have existed. And so this is the photo that I found him, that I discovered his work through. So I initially only saw this photo, and I was just blown away at the geometry, the layering, the color composition, and just everything that everything in this frame is there for a reason, and it's all in. I mean, some of it is in motion. So the fact that he captured this at that exact moment where everything works, just blew me away. He has this way also of mixing artificial light and natural light, and each photo has multiple photos inside it, which is amazing. Just going to show one more because I love his work. There's a book that has all these photos in it that I highly recommend, which is probably my favorite photo book of all times. It's called The Suffering of Light, and it's basically all his work to date, pretty much, and it's a combination of, I think, what he shot in Mexico, and in Haiti, and in Cuba, and very colorful places, so it's all in that book. Fantastic work. So we're back to my pictures now. So the other way I kept learning through this is through workshops, and there's a few that I wanted to talk to you about because those were the most helpful to me. Right, I think economically there's something happening right now where I'm sure you've heard, it's hard for photojournalists to make a living. So only with publications. So the good news, I guess the silver lining of this, is that there's a ton of workshops. They need to make an income somehow. So it's a multiple income stream business now, and workshops is part of the income stream that they rely on. So as a budget-minded student, though, it's hard to figure out which are worthwhile because there's all these workshops available. So I'll tell you the ones that I found were the most bang for the buck, the biggest bang for the buck. So those are the ones that I really loved, and the first two I actually just went in October, and there's a couple people in the room that were there with me. These first two are, what's nice about them is that they're cheap or free. The first one is free, the second one is not inexpensive. The downside is that you have to apply, and the application process and the selection process are pretty strict. So they're hard to get into. There's some, I think the first one, the Eddie Adams workshop, there's a restriction of you either have to be a student or have to have been a professional for less than 3 years. So in my case, I was professional for less than 3 years. And the second one, I think you have to have a letter of recommendation by one of your teachers or something like that. So it's not terrible, but they look at your portfolio, and the first one lets in 100 people. They pick 100 people from all around the world. Second one is about 50 people, and but they're fantastic workshops. You get taught by top-notch photographers. The Eddie Adams workshop this year had it was a Pulitzer. It's the 100th anniversary of the Pulitzer. So and everybody teaching there was a Pulitzer Prize winner. Some of them several times over. So it was just fantastic teachers there. And Momenta Workshop I talked about before, it's not as cheap, it's a little bit more expensive, but they offer scholarships. And what I learned after paying full price is that they're not that hard to get. If you apply and you're serious, usually you can get that scholarship, and it cuts down the price in half, I think, or you get a serious discount. So again, they're not in New York, but they have them in different cities. And if you want to learn social documentary and you like you want to work with nonprofits, this is a great one to take. Obviously, all these are strongly oriented towards photojournalism and documentary photography, so not strictly street photography, but it's basically all the same. It's about storytelling, and so they're very relevant to street photography. Yeah, this is a very layered. So this is what I love to shoot. And in Venice Beach, sometimes you bump into these scenes, and it's just unbelievable when they happen. They just don't happen that often. What was happening is this little 5-year-old boy and his mom, who's actually in the sand behind there, were babysitting the snakes for a street performer who was taking a break. So what's the worst that could happen, right?
Are there two snakes?
So that's the cool thing is there's this snake and there's a second snake slithering away towards this lady on the ground who's his mom actually. So anyway, it's just crazy scenes. What I wanted to say about again, lessons learned is one thing I've learned to do is to cultivate mentor relationships with some of the people who teach those workshops. And I'm new to this business, and it's very helpful when somebody can open doors for you and help you understand the context of what how to submit your work and things like that. But in return, I try to be really respectful to these people, write nice thank you notes, and recognize them for their help, and I try to help them also as much as I can. So about marketing so this is another very layered, crazy scene. I was shooting inside a hippie van outside of Venice Beach. So there's lots of things happening here. He's talking to the dog, he's got this ear pierced thing. He's passing a joint to this guy holding a cigarette up there. His guy's like kind of half passed out. I love these animal pants there. The cross, I think there's a skateboard. Yeah, there's a skateboard somewhere. There's a guitar. So those are the shots I like. But marketing-wise, I'd love to know what brought you here. So, like, if I could see a show of hands of who came from Facebook or Instagram, if anybody. Okay. All right, and from the event posted on the website, I imagine that's most people. Okay, all right, and for those who haven't raised their hands, aside from people who knew me from other workshops, any other way that you found out about this? You just what?
Walked in.
You walked in. Okay, perfect.
I get emails from B&H work.
Oh, okay. All right, there you go. All right. Well, so I use social media, Instagram and Facebook, mainly Instagram to promote my work. And the reason I do that is because it's really what I found to be the most time efficient way of doing it, because I'd rather be out shooting. So I try to just post on Instagram a couple times a week, and it's brought up this opportunity, which is fantastic, and it's brought up other things, and it's just amazing what you can get by just posting once in a while. And so thank you again, Judy.
How are you listed?
Oh, so I'll oh no, I don't even have it on there. So it's my name. It's Dotan, Dotan Saguy, and yeah, you'll find me there. Just a couple more things. What I learned about contests, I was talking about that earlier, how I go about selecting them. Well, rejection always sucks, right? So, especially when you paid for your submission. So, there's a lot of great work submitted, and judging is highly subjective. So, it's hard to pick which ones to submit your work to. I try to research based on the theme, so try to find workshops that my photos are a good fit for. I try to research now who the judges are, because I start, it's always the same people judging those contests. If you look often enough, you'll see there's a lot of names coming back, and you tend to learn what they like. So if you look at which images won before, things like that can be really helpful in terms of figuring out, does your work has a chance or does it not have a chance. So, for example, I don't really enter any more contests that tend to reward very conceptual kind of fine art images, because my work is not, in that. But I used to just kind of submit and see, and of course I get rejected because they weren't looking for those kinds of images, and I try to also not submit to things that are where they tend to reward images shot with a radically different style of street photography. There's many different styles, and so I try to find people who like the kind of work, have a chance at least of liking the work that I do. And then these influencers, the people that you find often on, as judges or editors, what I found is that they don't really want to, they're not that impressed if you can show them one great image. Because they don't really consider you a great photographer if they can see one great image. What they want to see is that you can make consistently great images over and over, and that you're fully committed to continuing to make great images, and that you start being recognized by their peers. Those are the three elements that kind of start to put you on their radar, is what I found. Initially, I was like, oh, but I shot a great image. Why do they not recognize me as? And they want the consistency, the commitment, the recognition from their peers. So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg effect that I found there. And the only way to break through that is through time and perseverance, and keep submitting, even if you get rejected. Eventually, if they see enough good work, they start giving you the time of day, basically. And sometimes I caught some breaks, like in March, before any of my stuff was getting noticed, even before I started submitting a lot of things, Singapore Airlines knocked on my door. I think from Instagram also, they might have found me there. And they wanted to do a 9-page feature about my street work. And I was so surprised. I was like, they probably have the wrong person. They're confusing me with somebody else. And they wanted to publish my photos. So the feature was published last month. And it was great to see my pictures in print. And then some pictures I wouldn't have suspected, like this picture is not one that I was even showing on my website anywhere prominently, but they liked it because editorially it worked to place their text. So sometimes you don't know, based on where they want to put it, it might work even though you think there's too much sky there. No, for them it's just perfect. So before we go to questions, I'll just show you a little bit of what's in my bag, since Leica's here and I always get asked that question. So this is my weapon of choice. It's over there. But the monochrome, I just love working with the monochrome. Most of the pictures, all the black and white that you've seen was shot with the monochrome. I started actually to back up a little bit. I started with the older monochrome, and I ended up moving to the new one. And all the color work was shot with the M. I use it less often because I do less color work. But in cases where when I went to Seoul, I had to shoot color. When I went to Cuba, I had to shoot color. When I shot for the newspaper, I had to shoot color. So whenever I have to shoot color, this is what I use. This is my lens. This is actually what's on the camera right now. It's my main lens. The reason I like it is because it's small. It doesn't flare, which is important in Venice Beach. This is the only 35 that I've tried that does not flare at all, and it's very light. So it's not a very fast lens. You can see it's 2.8. It's pretty slow lens for a prime, but for the type of work I do on Venice Beach, it doesn't matter because I'm always at 5.6 or higher. So it works for that purpose. Whenever I need a higher aperture, I use this. It's also not fairly inexpensive for a lens that fast. So I have two 35s. This is the one I use for low light, or if I want a shallow depth of field or that kind of thing. It opens at 1.2. And then the last lens I use is a Leica 50 millimeter Simethicone. And I don't shoot 50 as much. I used to shoot a lot more of it, but now I shoot almost everything 35. But whenever I shoot 50, this is what I use. And then in terms of workflow, it's pretty simple and boring. I use Lightroom. And then most times for street work, I'll take it into Nik Silver Effects Pro 2, which is now free, by the way. It's owned by Google, and you can download it for free. But it gives it, especially with, for scenes like in Venice Beach where everything is really washed out, the sun is just crushing everything. This really allows you to pump up the contrast and make the scenes a lot more dramatic, because otherwise they're kind of plain because of just the lighting that you get in those areas. So that's basically it. So I do have my stuff here. Yeah, so that's my Instagram, website, email.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.